I've always been mesmerized by libraries and by people who work in libraries, who work with books. Who are they? What is their role today? And to find these answers, I came to San Francisco, California. I'm standing in front of the San Francisco Public Library Maine building. This is the large organization that consists of the Maine Library in 27 branches, bookmobiles, exciting programs and initiatives.
Today, I'm going to talk with an amazing woman behind the unique development of the library system, Michelle Jeffers, Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships at the San Francisco Public Library. A successful journalist and reporter in the past, and an innovator and inspiring leader in the present. We'll talk with Michelle about her path in life, about the past, the present, and the future of books, libraries, reading, and our society in general. We'll also talk about empathy.
You call yourself 3 words, wordsmith, mouthpiece, and library lady. Which one resonates with you the most today?
I probably library lady, even though it's sort of silly, but and that was just sort of a joke that I was looking for 2 words that described me, and 2-word phrases. But I think that the library, I came here in 2008, and I didn't realize how much it would change my life, even though I was a library user and a library patron. But it's really, kind of become my identity very much, so working here.
And when you were a child, what did you dream of becoming? Did you have any idea? Because usually kids have.
I dreamed of a lot of things. I think that probably the most serious thing was, something in like being a doctor or something. I think when I was a little kid, I thought, I'm going to be a doctor. Then I realized how much work that went into it and maybe changed my mind a little bit. But I did, by the time I was, going into college, I knew I wanted to be a journalist, and that's what I was at first. And I worked as a reporter for almost 20 years, basically, from different radio and magazines and newspapers, mostly newspapers. And then as the journalism career, the media career sort of changed, the media industry sort of changed, I found myself gravitating, as many journalists do, toward public relations or working with the media at that end. And I have to say, when I worked in public relations, my favorite part of the job was working with the reporters, like helping the reporters to get their story, or helping them understand the facts of the data. I worked for some database companies, the data that we were presenting and how they could turn that into a story and what it showed about trends in actually Silicon Valley investing.
And you are a native of Central Valley of California,
right?
And so you majored in journalism, and you knew right away.
I moved from there. San Francisco State had a really good journalism program, so I moved to San Francisco to attend their journalism program, and that's how I ended up here and got a job in journalism right out of college. Ironically, right across the street on Grove Street, right from this building. Before, this building wasn't here at that time; it was a parking lot.
Did you use the library at that time?
I did. I used to come to the old Maine Library, which is across the street from us this way. Now the Asian Art Museum. I used to come on my lunch hours all the time. And I actually did when I worked at this company, I did stories about the library. I did some stories using the archives, and I had met the archivist, the director of the History Center at that time, and she had some interesting stories to tell about old San Francisco that were still resonating as media stories. And so I actually got to spend some time over there meeting some of the librarians, and it stuck with me. And I just loved to use the library and would go take my breaks sitting in the reading room, if I had nothing to do that day, and I'd go in there just to kind of have peace when I was away from the city desk where I worked.
So your work has always been connected with literature, with words, with speech.
Right.
So you started with written word, and then
I ended up
with spoken word, so to say. So now your job is more connected with publicity, because you present, you do public speaking a lot too.
This library opened in 1996, so it's almost 30 years old now?
Yes, it opened in 96 to the public, and this building is unique. It's not just beautiful, but also very functional, because I think it has seismic design to withstand earthquakes.
Right.
And also I read somewhere that it's the first building that has a very high quality of air ventilation.
Right, it's true that this building was built to circulate the air, in the building and to like kind of naturally cool and heat itself. It's also one of the first modern libraries, when it opened, to have this kind of central atrium that we're standing in right now. So that you walk in and you have this big, magnificent space before you get into the shelves of books. And now many modern libraries are built like that, with that same idea, that a beautiful soaring atrium.
And it's very spacious and very welcoming when you come in, when you come to the library. That's very important. And this is also thanks to this beautiful, dramatic skylight, right?
Yeah.
It's, I don't know how you call it. Probably I'm calling it Oculus, but maybe it's different.
We call it the Nautilus, and it actually is reflected in our logo. After this building was built, we redid our branding and our logo and our fonts, things like that. And the idea, I believe, for the architects was that it was like a library. The way a library classifies things, it's like like chambers of knowledge. Like you classify and you organize around different sections, just like in the library. So it was kind of a touch to that, a touch to the idea of a nautilus is filled with chambers, and the library is filled with different chambers. So.
Okay, Michelle, so we're here we're still on the ground floor.
Right.
And I see there are a lot of printed materials here, and there are some interesting sections of the library located on this floor. Could you tell us a little bit about them?
So this is probably the most popular floor at the library. This is browsing fiction, mostly browsing fiction, also our Lucky Day collection. So this collection is intended right here to be like the most popular books, the best sellers that are just out, and you can't reserve them. You just have to stumble upon them by coming in the library. So that's the idea, is that you come in and you maybe been waiting for this book, and you come in and here it is on the shelf, so you can check it right out.
You can see it right away.
You can see right away the really popular stuff. Like I'm thinking, you know, like when President Obama had his memoir, his biography out, that would be the kind of books that would be right here.
And they're the most popular.
They're the most popular, the ones that end up with like thousands of people waiting for those books.
Yep. So they can easily find them.
So
right away,
and it's the idea. I mean, we have others that you can hold and request and wait for, but these are the idea is that if you happen to come in the library today looking for something else, you might find that bestseller that you've been waiting for, and you can take it right away. And then these are mysteries and urban fiction, a lot of things, a lot of staff picks from the library of like what they think is like, you know, undiscovered gems sometimes, or very popular books. And then over here we have like our book club books. So the library does a lot of book clubs all year long. That we do One City, One Book, which is our annual big book club. That was the Chinese Groove. As you can see, there's no copies of the Chinese Groove because they're all checked out right now. But these are also past book clubs that we've had. On the Rooftop, Margaret Wilkerson Sexton's beautiful book about the Fillmore fiction. So all of this is fiction. Then we go into DVDs. The AV Center has music and movies.
It's a large center.
Yeah. And then on this side, this is all fiction by alphabet, graphic novels, LGBTQ fiction, and then at the end is the Deaf Services Center, which offers services specifically for people who are deaf or hard of hearing.
And I read a review from someone who was praising the center, who comes here specifically to the center.
Yeah.
This is a great reviews to
This
get.
is like a great resource, and it's the only one in the city like that. That is really, the staff there, many of them are also deaf and use American Sign Language and communicate with people. There's other tools there. There's a certain kind of phone, like a video phone that you can call your family by using it there.
That's amazing, yeah. So Michelle, we're standing on one of the bridges in the library, and we see also one of the art pieces in the background, the functional stairway. There's also the cyclone fragment. These are modern pieces of art. And I noticed that you also have several bridges in the library, and I just thought that it's kind of symbolic because it's a bridge from not knowing to knowing. If you read something, you get information, and also it's the bridge to connect people, the community. And you also have the bridge at Maine. Could you please tell us what this is about?
And that's a relatively new center. It opened in the last 5 or 6 years here at the Maine, and it's called the Bridge at Literacy and Learning Center, the Bridge at Maine. And it does take its name from the bridge that leads to that door to it. But the idea was that it was, you know, helping people to get the skills that they might not have, helping people who don't, you know, adults who can't read, children even who can't read, helping them specifically if they have like reading difficulties, like helping them with a really phonics-based approach, as well as ESL classes, immigration classes, and a lot of technology classes. So really helping to bridge the gap in knowledge is really the thinking. Like bridge will, the bridge will take you there.
So it's like the learning center,
right,
literacy center, and also technology center at the same time.
At the same time, exactly.
And considering we're here in the Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley, where we see technology evolve and we see all the innovations every day, how does the library staff try to keep up with all the innovations?
I mean, they're all, we're heavily librarian staff, and I think that what they know how to do is they know how to do research, and they really I'm so impressed by the library staff here because they spend so much time researching and understanding and finding partners that if they don't have the skill to find a partner to bring in to help teach the skill to the public and also to the staff, but they dedicate themselves to like a library, keeping the most current, knowing, understanding what's coming up in technology, in collections, and what's being published in books, all those things. They just really work at it. That's part of their job, is to stay abreast.
Digitizing all the materials,
right,
that's a big thing to do. It's also takes some knowledge in technology.
Right.
And, the question that everyone asks right now, because it's a question of the day, AI and the future. Are you using it at the library, or what do you think is the future of it? Is it going to be like a helpful tool maybe at some point?
I hope it'll be a helpful tool. I really do. I really have hope that I think that with the right kind of thinking around it, it could be a helpful tool. We've been using it only in like teaching classes and trying to inform ourselves, but also bringing community that wants to learn about AI and helping them find a place that someone can tell them what's coming. We had a number of programs for our Tech Week, which was just last week, with the AI as the focus, and brought in a lot of experts to talk about how it's going to change things in medicine, or how it's changing things in the workplace, or just in your home. So we're really trying to stay on top of it, and I hope, with the right approach, thinking about it with the right approach fully, that it can be a helpful tool for all of us.
I fully agree, because I think it's, it's not a threat like some people are, warning us about it, but it's more of a helpful tool we're going to use more and more in the future.
And I think that, also the other thing to think about librarians is that there have been a lot of different technologies that have come up over again, we're almost 100 and almost getting close to our 150th year. But in that time, radio and television, all these things that were and the internet and the computers were all going to, get rid of libraries or do away with librarians. And what we found is that people need the librarians because they help them navigate those new technologies. They help them understand how to use them and think of ways that they can be most useful for society. So I think that the idea that this is going to sort of wipe out libraries or
replace us all completely,
I
don't think so.
I remain hopeful that that's unfounded, that we will always help people to navigate the changing world.
What is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think it's, kind of like everybody who works at the library, is knowing that the work that you do, has an impact on somebody's life, that people that they're either becoming more aware of library things, or that we're helped, that the work that I've laid the groundwork for has helped them to learn to read, or to help their child learn to read, or to get, to find a job, to get to their goals. I think it's that, like knowing that we're all working for this greater good for society.
I know you also received the award as the most empowering employee of the city. I'm sure this was one of the highlights of your career. How did you feel about receiving that award?
It was wonderful to receive it, and I felt very honored, and I just did not expect it at all. But I used to joke with my boss, the former city librarian who retired a few years ago, that it wasn't the most empowering city employee, I was the most empowered city employee, because he and my direct boss at the time, they all gave me so much support and let me try things, that they really sort of trusted me to we haven't done this before, but let's try this initiative. Night of Ideas is one of them. Let's just try something like this at the library that we haven't done before. And so they've been so just letting me like come up with ideas and go with it. So that's why I say I'm like, it's more like I was empowered, not empowering, but I hope that I'm doing that to my staff now.
Yeah.
You know? I hope that I'm telling them
well
to
deserved.
like go after their innovate, you know, to just actualize the things that they come up with. Like, you know, it's worth trying things. I will say we were approached in probably 2018, I think. We had a long-standing partnership with SF MoMA. We did a lot of work with SF MoMA when they were renovating their museum, and so we hosted some smaller exhibits here and partnered with them. And they came to us because they had been approached by the French consulate and now Villa Albertine, the French you know, embassy, to do a nighttime program that was happening in more than 100 cities around the world. This night of ideas, of discussion and debate, but also entertainment and food, and just like a kind of a brainy festival.
So it's actually happening at night.
It happens
right?
at night. It happens at night. So we have it, for us, it's been always on a Saturday night. We close at 6, we reopen at 7 o'clock, and we go till 2 a.m. basically in the library. So it's kind of like that everybody's dream when you're a kid, like spending the night in the library, so a little bit after hours in the library. But we co-create it. Now our main partners are KQED Radio and still Villa Albertine, the French consulate. But we work on it for months, and we really try to use all the spaces in this library, all the little rooms in this library, to have different speakers, authors, discussions on issues like AI, issues about community, but issues about climate change, issues about immigration. We had a number of sessions on like prison reform and social justice movements. And so you come together for these heady discussions, but then we also have like strolling performers and a rock band and, you know, a disco. And in fact, right up here in this area, the people, we had a party, like kind of a DJ party up here, and people were dancing on those tables that I had to look the other way. So, but it's fun.
I should come to one of those events. That sounds fun.
It's very fun. It's very, and the staff all comes to work, and it's just like this very special thing we do for the city, and it's all free. And so it's, you know, just like a very special, different way to engage with all the community in San Francisco.
It's entertaining and informative at the same time. There is a stereotype in Europe that people in the US don't read much. And I came to the US so long ago, and one of the major discoveries I had was libraries, US libraries, and that people read a lot. And I have to say that the libraries that I went to, they were life-saving because they helped me adapt to the new life. And it's always hard for people who come from different countries, different cultures, to get used to this reality, to the totally new culture, to the new country. And libraries helped me in many ways, where I found all the resources I needed, from like transportation maps, city guides, to preparation for tests, driving tests, you name it. And then when I had kids, I found friends, you know, and like-minded parents. And so a lot of friends come from those book clubs and from those groups. So I'm sure that you have a lot of patrons who are multilingual or immigrants. What do you offer to them?
So this is a great place to be talking about it. Many of the branches, so in addition to this main library, we have 27 branches. And each branch will have books in the language of that neighborhood. So say the Excelsior branch has a large Spanish language collection and also a Filipino language collection, but this main library has it all. So when we go up to the 5th floor, there's a large international language collection, and we collect items in more than 50 languages. The children's librarian here, a children's library space here, also has multilingual children's books. So for just as you described, for families and people who don't read in English, there's a lot of selections.
And I'm sure
there.
you have also book clubs and groups, play groups for parents and kids.
We have story times basically every day of the week, which is like kind of the most important thing we do is for, you know, 0 to age 5 before school to hear stories read to them and songs and music. And our story times are really developed with the idea of building early literacy skills like repetition and rhyming and songs and word sounds and stuff, so that when kids, it's really preparing kids for when they go into kindergarten to be able to start to learn to read.
And for multilingual parents and families, this is very, very helpful, and this is something they do need, because I can speak from my experience.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. We actually there's a woman who we ended up featuring her in we have this annual lecture called the Effie Lee Morris Lecture, named for a former librarian, and this author, younger author's name is Yuji Morales, and she used to come to the Western Edition branch. She moved here from Mexico. She didn't speak any English. She brought her young son, to the story times, and had this just, awakening at the library of like learning to speak English, taking him to the story times. She could not believe that we would give her a library card, but we give everyone a library card. And I
think anyone in California,
anyone in California can get a library
become a patron.
So she really learned English thanks to the library, and really credits, and now she writes children's books, and she's a very popular children's book author, and credits it all to the library.
Quite a story.
Yeah.
About your children, so are they in any way connected with libraries?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because my daughter, who graduated from college with a degree in creative writing a few years ago, worked some different jobs, worked in teaching and after-school programs, and worked for a publisher for a while, and had worked for magazines in New York. And then she came home and she decided to go back to library school. And she went to library school and she graduated, and now she's a children's librarian here in the system in one of the...
In the main building?
No, actually at the Noe Valley branch. So,
but in the San Francisco
but in the
Public
system,
Library,
in the same system. Yeah.
Wow. So you work together. So you
a little bit, but we work together. But
does she enjoy it?
She does, and I enjoy it. I mean, it's funny to get that different perspective of a real frontline librarian dealing with children, and I get a lot of information from her and a lot of ideas for how to make things better for staff because of any pain points she faces, but also it's so nice to see your children develop this way, and also sometimes we'll be out in the neighborhood where she works, which is also the neighborhood she lives in, and people will see her on the street and be like, oh, there's, the librarian. And it's like walking around with a celebrity, it's like when you were a kid and saw your teacher
you get
on the street,
recognizable.
you're like, why are they, And so it's nice to see her having that impact on her neighborhood community too, that people...
That's great. It seems like she's following your steps in a way,
bit,
right?
yeah.
She's taking the similar
kind of going,
path. Yeah.
And this is I'm glad that she listened, that this was a great place to work, because it is a great place to work.
So she loves reading too.
She does love reading
books.
too.
And how did you teach your kids to love books and to enjoy reading and to really appreciate it?
I think I'll carry that back to a story about the library, which is that one of the big initiatives that we do, that I've had the pleasure of working with our chief of collections, Shelley, to do, is to get more books into the hands of kids, because I think that you love reading and you love it by having access to it. And so we have a program called Scholars at Home, where we give boxes of books to families we buy them, but we give them to you. It's not a return to the library kind of situation. It's so that you have your own library, that you have your own bookshelf at home, and you have books accessible to you. And we have boxes for preschoolers and toddlers, little kids, so that they get used to having books around, that's a valuable thing in your house. And I think that's how you build readers, is by showing them that there are books in your house and that you have them available.
So just basically having more books so that kids are around books.
Right. So the kids are around you, so that it's like your furniture. It's a regular part. It's not a special thing. It's not that you only see at the library, that you see it in your home too.
What would you recommend for parents? Because nowadays, with all the gadgets,
And I tell everybody to come into the library, to visit it often. it's different than what you may remember when you were a child. It's probably very different than what you remember as a child, and it's probably different than what you remember even as a college student. So bring your kids back and look for the connections. Really look at our calendar of events. Really look and see all the other things we're doing besides just circulating books, because you can bet that we have something for you. And if we don't, we're very open to like people generating ideas. You know, somebody generated an idea, and now we have like Dungeons and Dragon clubs all over the place at the library.
You can definitely find something to your liking.
Exactly.
And you can also help with literacy.
If you're a struggling reader, we have programs for that. The Fog Reader program is really great for you know, it's very important for kids to read by like grade 3, by grade 4. If you haven't really learned to decode words, there's chances that you're going to struggle for the rest of your life. You know?
Age
so there's a kind of a window of 1st to 3rd, 4th grade to really understand how to read and how to put words together, put letter sounds together to read. And so we have a program that if you are struggling, you can get one-on-one. It's free. It's one-on-one tutoring. We train the tutors on this method called Orton-Gillingham that is very much about decoding and sounding out, kind of a phonics-based approach. And we've seen like just remarkable success with it.
That's a super helpful program for sure. And speaking about this transitional age with kids, young adults, I just read in the same book by James Patterson that one of the librarians is saying that when like a long time ago, this section of books for this age didn't even exist.
Exactly.
There were just adult books and children's books.
Exactly.
And there was nothing in between. What would you recommend, like maybe any books you would recommend for young adults? I'm sure you have a large department now, like for this age.
I know, what would I recommend? I mean, they're right in that there's been nothing in that age range. There was nothing in that age range when we were growing up.
Not adults yet,
not adults,
but not kids anymore.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of fantasy books in that. I can't think of any titles right now, but I think that the important thing is to just like whatever you're interested in. You know, people like to say, you know, like want you to read, and I remember this when I was a kid, they want you to read really serious books, and that's not the point. You know, it's like read what you like to read. We have a lot of graphic novels, a lot of manga and anime books,
comics,
and comics and stuff.
Too.
People love that, and you know, I know a lot of people that like that's the breakthrough that gets them to read, and it's like, and from there you go on to read other things.
And when you were growing up, so was reading an important part of your childhood?
It was an important. I mean, I grew up with readers, definitely. My family was all readers. My mom and my grandparents, but I was a struggling reader too, and I wish that I'd have. Well, Fog readers would have been helpful for me, but I also had grandparents who like kind of sat down with me and did the same kind of word building that we do in Fog readers, and really like made sure that I got to where I needed to go and helped me. And then, but they were also very free with like whatever I wanted to read. Like I wanted to read comic books, and that was my gateway to really reading, was reading a lot of
kids,
a lot of meaningless comic books. But that practice of reading every day is really what changed me.
Yeah, the interest in reading, that's the main thing.
Exactly.
Right? It doesn't really matter what, but
the ability, just to do it.
Did you have any book that you remember impressed you or impacted you in a way?
You know, I was thinking about this. I mean, I loved like the Beverly Cleary, like the Ramona and Beezus books. I loved those books as a kid. I thought they were so funny. And then I remember really distinctly, my mom was a single mom, and we used to go to the neighborhood library that was in our neighborhood, and that was like kind of a big treat, like midweek after she got off work. You know, sometimes we'd go like on a Wednesday night.
It's like your time together with her
our time
too.
together, and she was going back to school, so she was always trying to do her homework and stuff, and I would just get to kind of wander through. It was a really tiny little library, but could wander through, look at records, look at children's stuff. And then I remember that like one day she took me to the Maine library, I think it's the Central Library in the town I grew up in, on a Sunday. Like we went over there, or maybe it was a Saturday. It was on a weekend day, so we had more time, and I was just mesmerized by this big library. It was probably like 3 floors. I was mesmerized by this big library with all these books and all these displays of different things, like a display of miniature furniture and stuff. And I was just like, I just remember it so distinctly. And then my mom had heard of this book that had been out for a while then, but this would be like the late 60s at this point, or early 60s, mid 60s. She wanted to find this book called Eloise. I don't know if you read the Eloise books when you were
My kids did. So yeah,
she went and she had heard of it and she wanted to read it to me, and we found the Eloise books, and I loved Eloise, the Maine, the original story Eloise, and then there's other versions of it where she goes to Paris or Russia or and I still love that character and those books, and I had to get them all for my daughter when she was growing up. Just because they're sort of ridiculous. I mean, they're not like serious reading, but they're just really fun to read. And I love that memory of my mom.
And it seems like you're very close. You were very close with your mom.
I was very close with my mom.
So may I ask if she's around?
No, she passed away about 6 months ago.
Oh yeah. Wow, I'm so sorry. But I feel that you're very, very close with her.
I was.
What would you say is her main lesson in life that you would also pass on to your kids?
She was just like such a big champion of me. And someone mentioned this right after she passed, that no one's gonna champion you like your mom is. And so I realized that she was sad that I moved away from the town that she lived in all her life, and that I moved to San Francisco. But she was still always had my back, always thought the best of me, and that that she really built up my self-esteem, that I was capable of a lot of things. And so I feel I hope I'm doing that for my children too, that I'm their biggest champion, and that whatever they want to do, I'm going to support them.
So in 2018, the San Francisco Public Library received a very prestigious award. It was named the Library of the Year by Gale Library Journal.
Right.
And I love the name of the award, for the human touch. So that's the approach, right? The personalized approach, individual to each person who comes to the library.
Right.
And I also love how Michael Lambert, the city librarian, in the recent article, says that the main idea for the library is to welcome everyone, and you even have signs throughout the library that say in multiple languages, everyone is welcome.
Right,
Is
exactly.
that the main idea?
That's the main idea, and it's very much about connecting the community, So people who think that the library is one thing, thinks that it's just about a transaction. I come and pick up a book, and I take out my book and I check it out. And the idea of that was to be look at all these other things we do, that we are about connecting and making sure people meet each other and come together in programs, come together in exhibits like this, a space for community and book clubs, but also programs and art and things that are all free. That was kind of our hook on that. So
it's not just about checking out some item or getting information from somewhere, which you can do at home, online right now. But also enjoying the space and connecting with others and building community. Right, exactly. And one of the amazing places is your art exhibits. This is one of them.
Yeah.
We can just go and see.
And this is an exhibit of an artist who it's called Ralph Chesay, A San Francisco Century. He was born in 1924. He moved from New Orleans to San Francisco. He had a mural. He painted a mural at Coit Tower during he was one of the WPA artists, the Works Progress Administration artists that was assigned to paint a mural. But he also wanted to be an actor. But he was very short in stature, and so he would never get cast in the role. So he became a puppeteer, and he built all these beautiful puppets. His wife made the costumes. His whole family got involved and started doing puppet shows where he could play all the roles that he wanted to play. He wanted to be Hamlet. He could play it with his puppets. And he ended up creating a TV show called Brother Buzz in the 1950s that ran from the 1950s all the way to 1969. It was one of the longest running children's puppet shows.
In 1957, children fell in love with a bee.
I'm Brother Buzz.
On KPIX Channel 5, San Francisco, on a weekly black and white television show.
Generations of San Francisco Bay Area people, now adults, watched it, and it was just really remarkable, but it's kind of a forgotten piece of history. He's passed away, unfortunately. Again, he would be 100 years old right now. But his family is still in California and in some cases across the world.
Yeah.
But they really wanted to honor him, and they brought this exhibit idea to us, and we ran with it because we thought it's such a great, like, untold story about this very much a Renaissance man.
And also that's the story of a person whose dream probably didn't come true at first, but then he tried hard and he still made it happen, but through a different way.
Through a different way.
But it still came true.
Yeah. And he was just like a painter. One of his nephews was in Big Brother and the Holding Company, Janis Joplin's band during the 60s. So that's a portrait of them, Janis and the band, Big Brother and the Holding Company.
I have a t-shirt with her.
It just did all his level of art just spanned this huge range of different disciplines of oil paintings and puppetry and muralism, and he did a lot of block printing and lino cuts and things like that. So he was just really quite remarkable man.
And what would be the most maybe challenging part of the work?
I think I think the most challenging part of the work is sometimes, when people want to criticize the library, and I won't stand for it.
No.
But it's like we do so much for people, and happily do so much for people, and then for people to pick on one thing and to criticize us for things that are often issues that face the whole city and are well beyond our control, but because you let these kind of people in, or you didn't stop somebody from coming in. I get really frustrated. I feel like one of the big stories that we were really criticized for was there was a man who was arrested at the Glen Park Library many years ago now for running kind of a dark web site, and it's like we had no ability to control. We are open to everyone, and when you're open to everyone, that literally means you are open to everyone. And so anybody who comes in and wants to use our spaces, is welcome here.
Yeah, and exactly, and you're open to everyone, and everyone is welcome, and some things are out of our control.
Some things are out of your control, exactly.
Yeah. And returning to the reviews, most of them are extraordinary. Everyone is saying how proud they are to live in San Francisco and have this kind of library here for them. But of course, there are some people who are always criticizing or picking on something, like you said. They find one thing and they found, or they saw a person who was probably, using the bathroom or something, and they didn't like, and they left a bad review. What would you say to them?
That we're open to everyone, and where would you have them go? In this society, people need a place to go. And certainly they need bathrooms, and where else, what would you have them do? But also, I think that the library is stronger by more people using it, that everybody uses it. We do have great numbers. We have great numbers of people that visit us every day, but people should make those decisions for themselves, but they should all come and use it. It belongs to everyone, and so everyone should really come in and use it.
Yes, that's true. And the important thing is that for people who experience homelessness, for example, library is a lifeline.
For sure.
And one of the newspapers in Norway covered the story that how amazing you are in helping people. And they give example of two people who came to the library. One was working at the library as an assistant, or what would be the right
probably
word?
Was it one of the HASAs, the Health and Safety Associates,
right? And who helped another person, Sean, who came to the library, and she was helping him to fill out the forms, to find housing, to help him with guidance how to apply for a job, things like that.
Yeah,
and that's what the library is important in this way, that it's the story of two people who received help from the library and support that was needed for them, and whose lives were changed.
Right.
Do you hear any stories like that?
I mean, there's so many like that. We've had so many people who come in. That their life has changed. Sometimes in big ways like that, of really turning their life around. But sometimes it's just in little things of just being inspired to find a new career, to try to take a chance and pull their resume together and start applying for jobs, or just We have people that learn to use the computer so that they can email their grandchildren, and it's like that's not as impactful, but it's meaningful to them. We had one of the things that we do, one of our partners has been, for many years, has been the National Park Service. And so we do, during the summer, we work with them and we bring buses and we shuttle people from different branches to their national parks. So they might get to go to Muir Woods up in Marin, or they're just going to the Presidio in Land's End. And one of the very first years we did it, we went to one of the parks in Pacifica, Maury Point. And I think there was a bus that went from Chinatown Branch Library to Maury Point. And I remember hearing the rangers telling us afterwards that someone on the bus was with their mother, their elderly mother, and she said, and they went past Ocean Beach, and she said, "This is the first time I've seen the ocean."
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, what? No.
What a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just like a little, like giving people that opportunity to.
Yeah, that's the human touch.
Yeah.
That's exactly, I really love the name of that award because that represents what you do. That's for sure. Well, Michelle, you've been working at the library for almost 16 years. And do you have any favorite places here where you like to be?
Well, I will say this whole library is my favorite, but there are many of the art objects and things that I love. I mean, I do love this atrium because during the pandemic, when there were very few of us working and the library wasn't open, it was just like, it brought me home every day to come walking through and coming into this building and knowing we were still standing. But there are certain little nooks and crannies and areas, and I'm a big fiction reader, so I love our browsing fiction collection behind us here. There are many special details in this building.
You mentioned pandemic, and this definitely was one of the challenging times for everyone. And I cannot imagine how hard it was for libraries to survive when everything was closed. How did you hold during those times? What measures did you take?
Well, as city employees too, we're required to be disaster service workers. So that's one of the
First responders?
Like not sort of first responder, not quite that, but more like that we will still work. Even the idea, I think it was started when earthquakes, like that we would come and do support after an earthquake, but nobody saw a global pandemic.
Yeah, that was unexpected.
So the library staff, many of them worked in the building, but some actually did things like contact tracing. I don't know if you remember when that was a big thing of like trying to get to like where an infection happened and who had it, and also notifying everybody that you might have infected at that time. So a lot of librarians were really good at that skill, so they became contact tracers, but we also worked at food banks. We worked at the vaccine centers that the city had set up. We worked at the testing centers that the city set up. We worked in public health and we translated materials. Our translators translated materials. We did a lot of work, but we also recognized that people also wanted their library resources. They still wanted to check out their books. Right away, we changed the way that you could get a library card, so you could get one online. You didn't need to come in. You could get an online library card and use our vast collection of online resources. So that really opened up for a lot of people all across the state that could immediately get access to ebooks and music and movies and databases and job skill trainings and all the things we offer online. And then we eventually started like doorfront service. So people could come pick up. People could make a request. They could come to the door. People would go in the back, get it, bring it out to you. So we started that, and we used this building and a number of branches, and we also used our bookmobiles. So our bookmobiles parked at San Francisco Unified School District sites. So we have 4 bookmobiles, and they parked at 4 different sites every week, and it was kind of like a drive-up service almost, because they had big parking lots. So they would come in the Mission and drive into the school parking, the school blacktop, and pick up their books and go. And so we kept it going like that for a while. And then I do remember when we finally had permission to let people in our buildings again. And it was like May.
When it was reopened?
When it was reopened. Even then it was like, we only reopened these floors. We quickly reopened the whole thing. But I remember it was so beautiful when we reopened. I think it was already 2021 when we reopened it. People just waited outside the main library for for an hour, to come back in, and it was so beautiful. And the staff where we were in the atrium, the staff all surrounded the atrium, and we just applauded as the patrons came back in. It was
so they couldn't wait to get here.
They couldn't wait to get back in, and we couldn't wait to have people in the space
again. It's like the real center for people to come and to connect and find information and books. And last year, after the pandemic in 2003, the library celebrated a very important milestone. I wrote it down for myself: 12 million checked out items in annual circulation.
That's
so you
right.
can see the pandemic didn't stop people from checking out more materials. They're more interested in reading and getting information and connecting. And it looks like during the time of crisis, people actually need more information and need more support and help.
Right, exactly.
You've worked here for such a long time. How do you think the library has changed over the years, and how the patron has changed?
You know, I was thinking, when I first started, I will say that when I first started, there was an economic financial collapse in 2008. You know, there was big trouble. And so it was really busy. People were out of work and were really coming to the library to find those new jobs. But the pattern often for people who use the library is that they use it when they have little kids. Their kids come to the library, they go to story time, they come in for homework and stuff, and so the parents come in. But as their kids get older or move away, people sort of forget about it and stop using it. And then they come back when they're older. And so we used to see that pattern a lot. Like we had a lot of kids and families, and then we had a lot of older people, but kind of that middle, you know, post-college, but to, you know, early retirement kind of was a gap. But we've really seen that change, and I think it's because we do so much more community building instead, and we've gotten away from that transactional model. Certainly, we still circulate a lot of stuff, but also it's more than that. It's like the exhibits and the programs and the classes and the connections that are made. So we do see like we've really recaptured people at different stages of their life that we used to miss.
Do you think that digital materials will eventually replace printed
I don't think fully they'll replace. There's so much value in the printed materials, and our historic collection is so valuable, and you're just not, you know, the idea of going back and trying to digitize everything that is already in print is a massive undertaking. But I think you will see more things coming out, either just digital or, you know, or like, exactly. And just sort of as we change formats, but you just never know, you know. We started circulating digital books only in 2009. So it's a lot in the technology world, but it's not a lot in, you know, in that we've been circulating books at the library since 1879. So,
wow, that's impressive.
so it's, you know, I could see some new format coming up. I just don't want to like commit to one thing, because, you know, we're about reading and getting information and literacy, and not about like what the item is. So.
What are your top 3 books that you would recommend reading?
Well, I mean, I have some books that were really meaningful to me, and I'm trying to remember them under the pressure. One is this book by Maggie O'Farrell called I Am, 17 Brushes with Death, which is a true story. And speaking of, she's a mother of a daughter who one of those brushes of death involves her child, I mean, who survived, but, you know, scary situations. But it was just so powerful, that book, to me, about believing in yourself too, like getting out of situations and getting past situations and recognizing your own resilience. And then there's another book called, I think it's called The Electric Lady, and it's a story in death-defying acts, but it's about a woman that everybody's dream, quits her job and joins a traveling circus for a year. And it's also about sort of resilience and about like learning from your actions and recognizing that the only way through things is to sometimes do them. Like my favorite line in the book is that, you know, like when things are really hard, the only way to get through it is to just do it, to just get through it. That, you know, you eat fire by eating fire. There's no
That's
trick.
A good expression.
You just do it.
There's no way around it.
There's no way around it. You just go through it.
That's very good.
It's my other one, though. I have another one.
We'll definitely list the names of the books. Basically, describe all of them and mention the authors, the names under the video if people want to read.
Oh, I know. It was Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. I love that book. It's kind of like a serious version of like Groundhog Day, where this person keeps living the same life during World War II to try to like change the outcome of history in a positive way. But it just like she keeps living it and then like literally dying, and then living it again and making changes, like changing things so she doesn't die at this time. And anyway, it's just really unique and ironic and a beautiful book, beautifully told. So those books were really meaningful to me about
Any
that.
classics that you love, or any authors?
Yeah, I mean, I'll read anything by certain authors. Like I'll read anything by Ann Patchett, who I think is just brilliant. I'll read anything by Nora Ephron, the late Nora Ephron, who I thought was such a great essayist. I'll read anything by Tana French, the mystery writer. I think she's fantastic. I think Gillian Flynn is fantastic. I love kind of a good mystery and suspense, something that really takes me out of my safe little world. Classics that I've loved. I mean, when I was in high school, I was really into Catcher in the Rye, and I definitely went down this J.D. Salinger rabbit hole for a while, read everything, everything he wrote. I love In Cold Blood, Truman Capote's book In Cold Blood. When I was a journalist, like that was just such a great piece of journalism that I thought was so just amazing, the work he did. I love To Kill a Mockingbird, which is somehow weirdly related to Truman Capote.
Love that book too.
It's funny because when my kids were younger, like middle school age or a little bit younger, I read them To Kill a Mockingbird because I was like, you have to hear it. You just have to hear it read. And so I read it to them, and they loved it too. And now, since then, there's another book, a Truman Capote holiday memory book. He wrote 2 short stories called The Thanksgiving Visitor and A Christmas Memory, and I try to read those to them aloud every holiday because they're kind of funny. They're very
just reading
short.
aloud.
Yeah,
So
just people don't read aloud to you anymore, and it's really
I miss that because
a pleasure.
I think it's the best pastime, to read and then to discuss it,
Right.
share your emotions. And you mentioned The Catcher in the Rye and To Kill a Mockingbird. I love those books too, and a lot of classics. And I see this trend with parents, which is understandable. We want to control, with all the information we have right now, we want to control access to this information. Sometimes we don't want our kids to be exposed to certain things, for example. We see the tendency in the so-called challenge books, or books that are taken off shelves. What do you think about that? What is your take on that? Do we still need to control, or who needs to control what kids read? Or do we need to have this control in general, and they should be allowed to select themselves and see the same thing from maybe different angles and develop critical thinking?
Exactly, all of that. I mean, I wouldn't be able to stand here as a library person and say I'm for book banning.
Right.
I'm definitely not. I think that a lot of those book challenges are really misguided and are really looking for ways to make a controversy that doesn't exist. Like a lot of times they'll say this book shouldn't be in the children's section, and most of the time it's not in the children's section. It actually is in a very specific section, but people want to make a big deal out of certain books. But if you don't give people that freedom to explore what they want to explore through books, they're going to find another way. So I just think it's so important to building empathy again. Then we come back to empathy, but also just building awareness and stuff, is giving people the freedom to read. It's not my job to tell people what they can't read, and I wish more people felt that way, that it wasn't their job to tell people what they can't read.
Yeah, we know we have those groups exist, and they want. But my little kid, my younger daughter, was saying, "Mom, I'm actually taking books from the banned shelf," and I said, "What banned shelf?" I didn't really understand first, and she showed me
music books
at a bookstore. Mom, there is a banned shelf here. I didn't even know that it existed, honestly. And I see The Hobbit standing there, The Hobbit and Charlotte's Web. Because someone complained.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, exactly. The Catcher in the Rye.
All these
and
books.
The Lord of the Rings too. And I read, and I actually went to explore what happened with Charlotte's Web. It's such an innocent book, and that's it. Someone didn't like that the animals didn't sound natural.
Right. Exactly.
Wow, those are
Speaking
animals.
And
so, so I think this is important for kids and for everyone to be able to have the selection and their own choice to decide what they want to read.
Exactly.
And to see the
and
same.
And I do think parents play a role in it. I think that if your parent doesn't want you to read, then they need to talk to you about it or reason
explain
with you,
maybe.
explain. But to take it away from everybody, to take it out of a library or out of a bookstore or out of, a school,
To
just
deprive-
because you
yeah.
disagree with the themes is a bridge too far.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is to talk about it.
Right,
Just have a
exactly.
conversation in the family, for
Right.
example, like what you think about the book.
Right.
And actually books need to ignite conversations, in my opinion.
Badger, a little badger. Somebody who's really skilled. So what these artists did was they got a set of catalog cards and they gave it, any community member that wanted them could come and get them. And then you could annotate them. That's why they're all written over. They wrote things about the subject or
In different languages.
in different languages. They drew little pictures on them like that badger or like those eyes or like, here's Cat in the Hat.
Oh wow, yes, that's true.
And here's Babar over here.
People are
That's
being creative.
Still really very bright. So they just annotated them in things that were important to them. And like this one refers to a page in the book that is here. So it's just like this weird community thing. There's another Babar here for some reason. For some reason, two Babars on this wall. And then they wallpapered the walls with them, these artists, Anne Chamberlain and Anne Hood. And it's on the 5th floor, the 4th floor, and the 3rd floor. All this side of the building is wallpapered with these cards. And you can just, you can just come and like read these little snippets of sometimes nonsense, but interesting.
There are like 1,050.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
These are all old, right?
Yeah,
Old library
yeah,
cards.
they're all
And then
pre-96. And then I will say that when people come to visit the library, this is what they want to do. People want to touch this wall.
Yeah.
Everybody I bring through here and I'm just walking them to another appointment, they're like they're just drawn to like.
It seems like this is like yellow because people are touching it so much, but
Yeah,
then
I
you
think
see
it's
the same color
fading too. I
up
think it's
there,
fading.
so I think
I think it's just fading.
fading the same
like
way.
the acid in the paper
Yep.
is doing it. Look at, I think, believe it or not, I think this might be. Oh no, it's not. I thought it might be Babar again, and I was
Oh,
like,
there's
"What's
some
with the Babar?"
sun.
But there is another, like Dr. Seuss. The Grinch is over here. So there's like a cell. I guess it's Saturn is what it is, but it's just like crazy, weird little
Yeah,
cartoony things.
That's really great, and I'm sure people are attracted to this when they want
This
to
fish
read. And
is on a book about California marine food and game fishes. It's just, I love the creativity, and I love that that these artists had this vision for it, but the community like kind of made the card, added to the cards.
And I like that the community is similar to the exhibit that you have now, the middle ground. We can also mention that. That's the really cool
That's
one.
very much about like understanding your community and seeing people and
Yeah.
not just like what you look like on the surface, but who you are. Like it's so easy to just dismiss the people you see on the street because you think, oh, they're nothing like me. And then you learn about their hopes and their dreams, and you learn about the things that are important to them or the ways that people have not seen them or may have not seen you. So.
That's another project, right? This is the art. It's not really. It's an art object, but at the same time interactive.
It's like a social science experiment, really, and they've collected a lot of data. It was National Science Foundation actually funded it, so they've collected a lot of data on like how important it is to ask these kinds of questions and to listen to other people.
And you work together with the Exploratorium too.
And how it builds empathy. That's what it is.
How
It's
to
about
build
build empathy.
And that's what we miss nowadays a lot, as we can see.
Yeah.
The main problem in this world is missing empathy.
For sure.
If someone wants to find their calling, for example, in art or literature or philosophy, history, in humanities, do you think there's future for these people? Or do they have to opt for more practical decision, or
I mean, I think,
actually follow the?
I think people should follow their dreams and follow their paths. And if they're not a science person or a technology person, I think there's still the space for that. I think that library, and it used to be called like library science. I don't hear that term so much anymore, but people do get a master's in library and information science to work here, to work as a librarian here. And I think that it helps people make sense of the world, like all the beautiful subjects of humanities and philosophy, and is about like making sense of what has come and what, about the human touch again, about recognizing empathy and community and communication and how to express yourselves. And I think that the librarians sort of fill that gap too, of like making those directions and helping people make those connections.
Yeah, I'm touching this subject because last year we had to make this similar decision, which path to choose for our daughter. When she was accepted to different colleges, and she was not sure whether she should go into science, and because it sounds like she would have more opportunities to find a good job there in this field, or she should still do art which she loves. And at some point we had to make this decision. We had a big discussion at the dinner table.
Yes.
And, like I asked her, what do you actually love doing? And she said, well, Mom, art and design would be something that brings me joy.
Aww.
And so my husband said, okay, not everyone has to be an engineer. Okay, someone has to write literature.
Right,
someone
exactly.
has to create art. So that's totally fine. I guess these people, like librarians, the people who work here in this environment, these are one of the most important jobs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to read this. I found this book when we talked on the phone with you. I went to a bookstore nearby, and I just stumbled on this book. I don't know how this happened. The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians by James Patterson. And it just came out this year. And I love how he wrote about booksellers and librarians and people who work at the library. And I think that represents your team as well. Today's booksellers and librarians are extraordinarily good at understanding and motivating. And armed with empathy, wit, and professional training, they take the confused, the fearful, the frustrated, and help them become more keen-eyed, sharp-eared, and justice-attuned. What they do is crucial for the country, especially right now. And they understand in their hearts and souls that in the beginning was the Word. Would you add something else? What is the librarian and the library for you personally?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think it's that. What a beautiful way to say it too. But I think I feel like I may be repeating myself, but it's that connection. It's that helping people, but also helping people to navigate. A lot of people thought, oh, the libraries, well, I can just Google that. I don't need to ask a librarian. But, you can Google and get a lot of answers, and not to speak ill of Google in any way. But if you want to get the right answer, you ask the librarian.
You ask the person, right, who works here, who knows. And yes, and they're the most knowledgeable, the kindest usually, well-mannered people, from my experience.
And they want to help. That's what they're here to help you find that answer. They're not going to be like, why would you ask me that? Or, why would you think I know? They may not know, but they will know where to look. And that's part of it, is like navigating information, like, where do I go to find this? And I think that is also really important as we see like different sources of news and different sources of information, and it's really hard to tell what is truthful and what is fake and what is one-sided or has an ulterior motive or is biased. And librarians really take that very seriously, like information literacy, really understanding what is a solid source for information versus what is not so, is clearly influenced by something.
And today's librarian, what do you think, what qualities they need to have, or skill set?
I mean, curiosity, definitely, helpfulness, wanting to work with the public. This is very much a public-facing job. So, people joke like, oh, do you just read books all day? Sadly, no. But, that ability to also be organized, to be very organized, and to understand like how to keep things organized.
Nowadays, we see that a lot of people have something what we call a burnout in their job. Is there something like that exists for people who work in the library?
I'm sure. I mean, I haven't achieved it yet, or I haven't gotten there yet, but I know that people do burn out and people move, and there are a lot of different kinds of library jobs. Like, people, it can be challenging working with the public every day, and the public is, has a lot of needs and can be very demanding, and that can really burn people out. We have some librarians that do work really back of house and work on the cataloging, ordering the books, buying the books, all that kind of process that is not public service facing. Or the History Center has archivists, librarians that are archivists, and they do work with the public, but a lot of times they're working with specific other city departments to archive all their records, where we are the repository of the city records. So they work kind of behind the scenes or work with people in that way. And then, as a career, I think that there are many different things you can do with libraries, with a library degree, that is not just in a public library. There's, university and school and academic libraries.
Teaching maybe too.
Teaching, there's museums often have library departments and library archives, and other organizations, even finance companies, even newspapers have archives that need somebody to understand how to organize and how to find it when you need it.
And for you personally, if you have a stressful day, for example, at work, and I'm sure you've had these days because you manage a lot of people, you have a big team, and a lot of responsibilities too. So how do you manage that? How do you cope with that, and how do you recharge?
Well, I do have a staff of about 50 people now, so there's a lot of demands on my time. For me, decompressing, I like to go out in nature. I like to go to the parks and just go on hikes and walk around in nature. That's just being outside, because I do truthfully spend most of my days in this building.
Even on some weekends.
Even on some weekends. So that's definitely a way to recharge. But oddly, when people ask me what hobbies do you have, and I'm always jealous of people who are really crafty and knit or sew or do art, and many librarians are musicians, and also a musician, also a writer and author and creative writer. I read. So I'm embarrassed to admit that's so stereotypical, but I read a lot.
That makes perfect sense.
I know.
I know you're an activist in this, and you support women. You're a successful woman yourself.
Right.
What do you think? Do we still have, which is surprising to me, the 21st century, we still have to fight for some freedoms and rights?
Yeah, it's pretty depressing, actually, the changes that we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, of taking away women's bodily autonomy. I think that, as they say, until all of us have freedom, all of us have the right to choose, all of us are free to do the things that we want to do, none of us are free. I really believe that. I also think that it still comes up, even less about legal rights, but that it's easier to dismiss women in the workplace. It's easier to not listen to women or to denigrate women in the workplace. Not in this workplace. Not in this workplace, but in the greater workplace. It's just people that say things just recently about a woman's place is only in the home, and a woman's highest calling is to be a wife and mother. That just misses so many women who that isn't the right calling for them, and to just tell everybody to have this idea that women can only be this one way.
Very stereotypical.
Very stereotypical. And to think that they have a right to say what women should be, not being a woman themselves, is pretty sad that people still believe that they have those viewpoints, but also believe that it's acceptable to say those out loud.
And I'm not even mentioning the pro-choice, right?
Yeah.
We can't, I don't understand how sometimes men decide what freedoms to give women.
Right, exactly. Well, look at the court. Yeah, definitely. And speaking of that, I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be in Washington, D.C. when the Dobbs decision was handed down by the Supreme Court. I was there for a library conference. And we were, and it was first thing in the morning. We were just getting ready to go to the convention center for the conference. One of my library colleagues, Katrin and myself, and we saw on a news alert that the Supreme Court had handed down the decision, and we ran to the Supreme Court. And got protest signs just to be among the first people out there protesting the court, because it's just such a setback for women.
Yeah, and do you think we still have any challenges in this respect? Something
I think, I mean, I do think that the long arc of history is going in a direction that will, like, I feel like we're in a setback now, but the long arc of history is for freedom, is for progress, is for rights for people. Like, you know, we've changed so much in 100 years, and I just don't, I think that this is a blip. I have to believe that this is a blip and that we will eventually.
I hope so too, because in our century, I think we should really go over it and have rights.
It's never really
freedoms.
worked out, you know, of like going back on these things, on more freedoms and more freedom of expression, and
because we want women to be taken seriously, and in the workplace and corporate world or anywhere they work.
Right.
And as a successful woman in your career, what would you recommend young generation of women who are just starting their careers, how to become independent, successful in their jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I think most women do this these days. I will say I don't have any great advice except to say yes, to try things, to follow the ideas that they have, and to, you know, continue pushing for their ideas, to be listened to stake their place, to not shrink away from anybody that might want to criticize them or tell them that they don't have a voice in this business arena, to continue to use their brains and get their expressions out. I would say,
not to be afraid, maybe
not to be
take
afraid.
a challenge.
Yeah,
sometimes,
exactly.
Because
Take a
women are shy, and sometimes they say, "Oh, I cannot do it."
Right, exactly. To know their power, and to know that it all takes work, and that the only way to do it is to do it, but to keep doing it. You know.
That's true, and to say yes to opportunities.
To say definitely to say yes to opportunities. To not shrink away from them, you know, when an opportunity comes, and even if you don't think you can do it, try.
What was the last time, maybe you can remember, when you said yes to something? You were probably hesitant, but then you went for it and did it, and
it all, you know, I do
out
think
well.
that most things work out well. I don't know if it's the last thing I did, but I think, like, saying yes to the Night of Ideas when when it first was approached to me, and saying, I think we could do that, not really have an idea how enormous it was.
Sounds like a huge project.
It was a huge project and took up a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad I said yes, because it really created something special, and I think that's it. That it's easy sometimes to say no, like, oh, we would never do that. Oh, we don't allow that. Oh, we, you know. But instead, like, to figure out the way to say yes, to figure out a way to make it happen.
it's very important. And what would you say to people or to women who feel that they're behind in life? Like they didn't succeed, or they missed something. You know, I just heard from a couple of my friends, so a couple of ladies who told me that, you know, we feel like we missed something, we didn't succeed something, although they're amazing mothers, you know, they're amazing wives. And I was saying, you didn't miss anything, you achieved so much. So what would you say to the women who feel that way?
I think people need to be proud of their own stories. You know, like you said, like, you didn't miss anything. You know, feel good about the things that you did accomplish. Maybe you didn't get the big hurrahs for it, but be proud of the things that you did accomplish. But also, it's never too late. Like, use your library, find a way. You know, if there was something that was a dream of yours, find a way to actualize it. Maybe it's just a part of it, but maybe that will be fulfilling for you. You know, use. You know, 5 years down the line, you're going to be the same. You know, whether you did this, whether you learned a new language in those 5 years or you didn't.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you might as well do it, and 5 years from now you may have a new skill.
And it's never too late,
right,
to start something.
And
They even have some, like, photographs of the old library.
Yeah.
Here, right?
Those are the old libraries, and then on this side we did a big renovation project from 2003 to about 2014, and these 24 libraries were either renovated, or 8 of them were actually rebuilt. And so it was called the Blip Project, and so these are all like posters from each library opened. We had a big celebration as each library reopened.
And right now we have 27 branches.
We have 27. Right? So almost all of them were done as part of this big bond issue. So.
And these are the old photographs.
Those are the old photographs.
What's there? I don't know.
Oh, I think it's the shop. It's it's their workshop for.
Maybe like some.
It's the carpentry
Project.
shop. So they do a lot of the, like, we'll repair bookcases and things like that. Any kind of carpet. They did some of the work in that exhibit we were just at when helping us build that little puppet theater in there.
Like maybe frames for some art too,
Yeah.
or things like that.
Things like
right?
that. Yeah.
The last three questions, they're
Okay.
more philosophical.
Okay.
What is success to you?
Benefit of the doubt, respect in my job, like to realize that my intentions are good. I don't get everything right, but that my intentions are good, and like that I have integrity, that what I say, I will do. Like I think that attitude, both that I have about myself, most importantly, but that other people that I work with have, is that we're all trying our best, and that we're having a positive outlook, and
Yeah.
that's the best we can do.
And you are definitely a mission-driven woman. So what is your mission in life?
Yeah, this sounds so cliche, but I think to help people, to really like feel like that the work that I'm doing has an impact on people, that it is like building a greater community, a greater society.
And the last question is, what do you believe in?
I believe in, what do I believe in? I mean, I believe that, again, like the long arc is for the best, that people are mostly good people, and that you need to sometimes look for the good in them, that most people want things to be positive, that want things to be happy, want progress, want people to have freedom and the rights they deserve and the jobs they deserve, like just to see the good in others.
Yep, that's perfect. You're so inspiring. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you. So.